Hi, everybody, and welcome to Clear Equals Kind, Essentials of Classroom Relationships. We've got 5 webinars in this series, and this is number 1 of 5. So settle in, get ready, and let's dive right in. What you're going to need for this series are a few things. So one, a somewhat quiet place. So if you need to turn off notifications or send people away, go ahead and do that thing. And a paper and pen is really useful. Along with this series comes a workbook that you can use. It's a fillable document so that you can just bring it up on your favorite device and take notes there. Or if you want to print it off and put pen to paper, go for it. You could do that too. So know that that's an option for you. The other thing is, do you have something to drink? Do you have some snacks? Do you have things around you so that you could get comfortable and be ready to learn and think and pause and write, which we will be doing lots of that throughout the entire series. So I'm Amy Williams with Amy Williams Academy. I'm so excited that you're here. My goal in the work that I do is to help educators and families learn how to show up and be the best possible person in the lives of the children that you love, whether they're students in your classrooms or children in your homes or children in your families and extended communities. We all want to be that adult that is memorable in the lives of children, and that we work to show our deep respect for children and help them understand that they can be exactly the person that they are supposed to be. Approaching them with love and deep respect, I think that's something that we all care about and share that in common. So I'm happy that you're here and ready to dive in deep. Okay, so the series is for you if a couple things. If you feel overwhelmed or burnt out, if you feel stuck in old patterns that don't serve you anymore, they don't seem to work anymore, and you'd like to try something different. The series is for you if you feel like your classroom is more chaotic than you want it to be. You're looking for harmony, you're looking for peace, you're looking for excitement and creativity and kindness and compassion, right? We all want more of that, right? And sometimes it doesn't feel like we're there every day, yeah? Okay, this series is also for you if you're looking for ideas and really clear, effective tools that you can put into place right away so that you can show up being that adult that you want to be. Okay, so our goals are this. Goal number 1 is to feel more confident, more clear, more calm in your classroom leadership. Another goal is to look at those old patterns that don't serve us anymore and really work hard to take some action, do some self-reflection. That's really going to call on vulnerability and some courage on your part. What can we do to replace what patterns that we're so used to and we just are thinking, yeah, I could do it a different way? We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how we're going to create more peace in our classroom. That's one of our goals. And another goal is to have some practical tools and techniques and ideas that you can put into place right away. Some tools and techniques that you could share with your teaching team, with others that you work alongside. Okay, so the first session begins now. And we'll talk a little bit about what is ideal anyway, right? We came into this program or into this career field with an idea of how we wanted to change the world, right? I can think about a time when I first started and I thought, okay, this is going to be so much fun. I love children and I love working with other people who have deep respect for children and am in awe of all the moments that children show us every day and those explosions into learning and creativity and the kindness that we see in between children, right? That's ideal. And then I stepped into a classroom and not everything went as smoothly as I thought, right? I stepped into leadership, supporting the adults who were supporting children in the classrooms, thinking, oh, this is going to be great. This will be easy. No, I didn't think it would be easy, but man, did I find that it was hard, right? To maintain that consistent optimism and that feeling like, okay, what I'm doing is good work. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm walking alongside children who are learning and growing, and what an honor that is. That sounds really great. And that sounds like the ideal, but sometimes it looks a little different. We're going to address that. So today in session one, here is our agenda. First, we're going to talk about and kind of dig into the type of adult you hope your children can become when they grow up. What kind of impact would you like to see them make in the world? What kind of experience do you want them to have as adults on the planet right here, right now? There'll be some time to do some investigating, some self-reflection on what's your style of classroom leadership right now. Are you more adult-centered or more child-centered? Right? We'll tap into a little Joanne Nordling's work in her book, Caring Discipline, which I recommend. And that kind of idea, how do we show up? Am I more adult-centered in my guidance, or am I more child-centered in my guidance? That can help us decide, do I need to be a little more child-centered or a little more adult-centered, depending on the situation, okay? Next, we're going to talk about basic human needs. So yeah, there's a little Psych 101 class, little moment of that today that may sound familiar to you, and I invite you to take a look at it with a little different perspective today and going forward. So let's see, we'll talk about lagging skills, the whole idea of lagging skills and unmet needs. Yes, we're going to talk about Ross Greene. Everybody knows and loves Ross Greene. If you don't, write that name down, look it up, reach out to me. I've got tons of resources I could share with you about that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of lagging skills, right? Ross Greene says children do well if they can. Children do well when they can. What can we do as the leaders in the classroom to support children? First of all, notice what their skills are that are lagging, and help build those skills for that child to practice and get what it is that they need, get what it is that they want in a way that is kind and considerate and respectful of others around them, including themselves, including you. We'll talk about the idea of hidden unmet needs too, right? So we'll get to that soon. And then we'll talk about a powerful tool that I'd love for you to try out first thing. As soon as this webinar ends and you get the first time you're back into a classroom or working with children, I want you to practice this tool of connecting at neutral times. Again, we're going to tap into Joanne Nordling's wisdom around the importance of connecting with children and building that relationship with them so that you deepen trust, you deepen their sense of knowing that you love them no matter what. All right, that's a big day. So, I've been there. I've been exactly where you are. I've felt overwhelmed. The sheer paperwork that can be involved, the preparation of the environment, that attention to the detail to create an environment where your children are going to be excited and engaged and inspired to learn and to grow and to be who they want to be in this world right here, right now. It's a lot of work. It's a big responsibility. And I have been stuck. Maybe that's why you're listening today, feeling stuck and overwhelmed, like, I can't do more. I can't do any better. There's so much happening right now. Sometimes I feel frozen. Have you ever felt that way, where you felt like I'm running as fast as I can and I can't do anymore, right? So sometimes we get to a place where we're stuck, feeling frozen in that pit, you know? I've been where you are with a classroom that was a little bit chaotic, sometimes a lot chaotic, working alongside teachers who had classrooms that were really chaotic. Oh, okay, notice what you notice, and then what are your next steps? What do you plan to do next? I realized I needed more help. Reached out to mentors, reached out to people that I admired and respected, read as much as I could, took all the workshops that I could because I knew I needed help. So I've been where you are, and you're here with me, and we're learning alongside each other. Okay, first big question. Deep breath, everybody. So when you think about the impact that you have on the children that are in your classroom or are in your sphere right now, imagine, how does that impact the way that they show up as adults as they get older? right? All the steps and all the years in between where they are right now as young children moving into pre-adolescence and adolescence, adulthood and beyond. What type of person are they growing into? What kind of change are they making in the world? How are they living out what it is that they are meant to do? So as we think about that, what do you hope for children? What do you wish for them to experience in this world? What type of person would you like for them to become? What type of person does our world need right now? So right now, I'd like for you to pause this. Whenever you see this slide that says pause and write, that's what this is for. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment and let you find the pause button, pause right now, and take as long as you need to write and reflect. What type of person do you expect, do you anticipate, do you hope for the children that you're working with right now to become? What do you wish for them? What kind of impact do you want to see in the world because they are in it, right? Okay, so we'll pause. I'll pause for a moment. You pause the recording and hit resume when you're ready to resume. Okay, now we're back. So take a deep breath. Now we're ready to carry on. So we've talked about that, we've written about the ideal, what you're hoping for, what you wish for in the world to come. Now let's take a look at ourselves. We're going to turn inward and do some self-reflection, right? And I'd like for us to take a look at that in that self-reflection of the difference between adult-centered and child-centered leading styles. How do you show up when you're guiding children, or when we may need to redirect children, or as you're preparing experiences for children in your classroom and beyond? Most of us have a place where we fall, like a style that we have, right? And it's somewhere between adult-centered and child-centered styles of classroom leadership. So what's the difference between those? Okay. So as we're thinking about that and holding on to that, I want us to remember this bit from Peggy O'Mara, who says that it's a simple and a powerful gesture. The way that we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. The way that we treat children, the way that we enter into relationship with children is the way that they will speak to others, the way that they will show up in relationship with other people. So it's a reminder of how important it is to be mindful. How do we show up, right? So with this in mind, as we go into the differences and the nuances of adult-centered and child-centered, hold that in your mind. Okay, so adult-centered, what does this look like? So adult-centered it's adult-centered, right? So someone who is more adult-centered might say to themselves or behave in this way, like, well, I'm the adult and I'm responsible, so I make the decisions. I've got years of experience, I've got some education behind me, it's my responsibility, so what I say goes. I'm not really bothered by the fact that you might be mad at me, or maybe you don't like me. I'm okay with that, right? So adult-centered learning style, adult-centered leading style can look like that. Kind of what I say goes, and I'm the adult. It's my role, it's my responsibility, and my feelings aren't hurt if you're mad at me, or even if you say I don't like you, or even say I hate you. I don't take that in if I'm more adult-centered. Now be thinking about the adults in your life when you were younger, or maybe even now, who are more adult-centered in their relationship with us, right? I think of my father, who tended to be much more adult-centered than my mom. We'll talk about her in a minute, right? But my dad was a sergeant in the Army and was very clear that he was the one that made the decisions. He's the one that set curfew. What he said went, there was kind of an infamous saying that he said often to my sister Betty, who tended to push back against this adult-centeredness of my dad. And he would say, as long as your legs are under my table, you're gonna do as I say. It's okay. It was clear who made the decisions, right? So that's adult-centered. So you may have some adults who are in your past, in your history, that come to mind when you think about this. You could also think about people in the world, right? Our leaders or other adults that we know who tend to be more adult-centered, right? All right. So the other side of that, if you took a look at it as if it were a rainbow or an arc, if you will, the other side of adult-centered would be child-centered, right? So someone who is more child-centered in their style, in their approach, are more concerned, ask lots of questions, follow the child, what they want to do. Why do I get to decide just because I'm an adult? Does that give me a right to make demands or to put boundaries or to put limits on my child's or my student's full expression of themselves? I'm really concerned when a child becomes angry at me or says, I don't like you, or even I hate you. I just take that to heart, right? If I'm more child-centered in my leading style, I'll tend to have more open-ended experiences for children. A lot of freedom is given to the child, right? So that's kind of a little bit of a touch on child-centered and adult-centered leading styles. And most of us fall somewhere in between, right? Now, if we wanted to go back and talk a little more about child-centered, I told you I would tell you about my mom. She was more child-centered, right? So pretty much if we didn't hurt each other or hurt hurt the animals or destroy our bedroom, then yeah, carry on. Maybe it was because I was the fifth born. Maybe she was just exhausted. I don't know. Anyway, much more child-centered. We had a lot more freedom when it was just mom at home, right? So think about the adults in your life that may be more child-centered, right? Maybe the teachers that you work alongside or in your teaching partnership or families that you serve. Can you see adult-centered and child-centered there? So like I said, most of us fall somewhere between the arc. It could be that we're more adult-centered or more child-centered, right? The goal is our agility, right? And our ability to determine, okay, does this situation call for more adult-centered, right? When a child is running with scissors and maybe running into traffic or spitting fireworks around, yeah, we show up as more adult-centered, right? That's when we might use a big voice, stop, right? That's more adult-centered. I make the decision because there's a safety something happening and I need to say no, I need to say stop, right? So, so the agility, yes, sometimes the situation calls for more adult-centered style, and sometimes the situation calls for more child-centered, right? Where you create and offer more open-ended experiences for children. You allow for some struggle to happen because we believe, yeah, that's where the learning happens, right? That kind of allowing for struggle to happen is much more difficult for those who tend to be more adult-centered, right? So consider that. Just think of this arc or this rainbow as you enter into your classroom the next time and you're doing some self-reflection and noticing and wondering, does this situation call for the level of adult-centered or child-centered that I'm choosing in this moment? Does this call for more adult-centered or more child-centered? So that's some self-reflection that will carry on for the next little bit. A really informative conversation to have in your teaching team, right? If you have a co-teacher or an assistant teacher or someone that you work really closely with children, talk about what is my style and what is your style? How does that show up, right? Okay. So now we're going to talk about family again. Those important adults who showed up for us as kids. What were their styles, right? So think about where did your family fall along the arc, right? Think about those adults who seemed so powerful and so much bigger than us, with so much experience, with so much more power than us as little kids. What was their style? Were they more adult-centered or more child-centered? So now's a time when we're going to pause again and take some time to write some notes. What did you notice growing up? Thinking back, what are those memories that pop up first, right? Think about the adults in your home. Also, remember the adults in our school growing up. I think of my mom and my dad for sure. And then I certainly think about my second grade teacher, Miss Fox. Wow, was she ever adult centered? And then I think of my sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Smoot, who was so child centered. There was a piano in the classroom, and every now and then she'd say, I need a music break. And we would stop what we're doing and come all around the piano and sing songs from The Wizard of Oz. It was awesome. So we all have adults who have made an impact in our lives. Pause right now and write down those names and a little description of how you would describe their style. Bonus extra credit if you want to write about how does that influence how you show up right now. Bonus extra credit if you want to write into that and decide, is that serving me anymore? Do I want to do something different? Would I like to practice my agility? Who are those people that I can talk with about this? And who could remind me that, I'm being really child-centered right now, and maybe we could be a little more adult-centered, or, vice versa. All right, there's a lot to write about there. So take a moment, find your pause button, pause. I'll be right here when you get back. Okay, now we're back. Deep breath. So now it's time to dive into the hierarchy of needs, right? Maslow, I think we've all probably seen or heard about this in our training or our preparation to become an adult in our Psych 101 class. And we've all probably heard the name, Abraham Maslow. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to talk about the influence that his time spent with the Blackfoot Nation influenced this, what you see, this kind of, this famous triangle, if you will. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But let's take a look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs as it's presented in this image, okay? So Maslow and his team spent lots of time doing lots of observations in lots of different places and coming up with the hypothesis that adults across cultures and across the world have basic human needs, right? And they noticed tendencies across cultures. They noticed how they connected to each other, right? So here they are. The first one, we'll start at the bottom, is physiological needs. Do I have food to eat? Do I have a place to rest? Do I have water to drink? Am I warm, right? Are my basic body needs met? That's a basic one. All humans need food, water, warmth, and rest, right? Now the next one is the need for safety. Am I safe to say what I'd like to say? Am I emotionally safe? Will I be hurt? Am I going to be harmed if I express myself, right? So there's emotional and intellectual security that's tied to the need of safety, right? Okay, so the next one, our next human need, is the need for love and belonging. Do I have people who love me? Do I have people who like me? Do I have a sense of connection? Do I have a sense of place? Is this my place to be? Is this my classroom? Are these my friends, right? Do these people miss me when I'm not here, right? That sense of connection and love and belonging is certainly something that is a basic human tendency and a human need, right alongside safety and our physical needs. So in addition to that one is the need for esteem. Is there respect? Is there a place for me to share my skills? Is there an invitation to do what I do well in my community, right? So esteem has to do with respect and status And recognition. Do people recognize I'm the best line leader of all line leaders, and I can tear up lettuce for a salad better than anybody, right? Okay, so the next one, according to Maslow, is kind of the point on top of this pyramid, if you will. And he recognized this as the idea of self-actualization. If you have all of these needs met, then I am able to be I'm able to reach my full potential and be the full expression of who I'm supposed to be in the world. Great. Okay. In the classroom, you probably can see where these needs show up for the children in our classroom, us too, but we're going to talk about that later. But as far as it has to do with children, how do we meet the needs of their physiological needs, their basic physical needs, their need for safety? How do we support their need for belonging? How do we create the space and create an environment where children feel loved and like they belong? How do we help children have an experience where they are recognized and their skills and their talents are able to be put into action in their community? And then, are they able to be the fullest expression of themselves, right? So that's one way to look at this hierarchy of needs as it relates to our classroom and the children that we support in that way. Now, again, this is one way to look at it. And what we often don't know about, you may know about this already, but I have to tell you, I did not know this until about 6 or so years ago. And I came across some articles and did some digging because I was like, wait, what? So there was a great influence to Maslow's work. And he and his team spent some time, a big chunk of time actually, with the Blackfoot Nation to observe their community and observe how they, what were their needs and how did they get needs met and what were the expression of their needs, right? All of that. And noticed something really interesting, right? So I want to make sure that we give credit where credit is due, because often, the influence of the time that he spent with that community is often overlooked and we don't hear about it so much. So let's talk about it, right? So yes, he saw physiological needs, the need for safety, the need for love and belonging and esteem for sure. But the top point of self-actualization was really tied into community as well. All of those needs were tied to community, right? So another way to look at it is in a more circular way, right? So check it out. In that community, yes, there were needs that were across the community. All humans had these needs. And as individuals, they worked to get their needs met for themselves, and they were able to reach out to their community for assistance if necessary. Likewise, if they saw others that had a need that needed to be met and they needed some help, of course, it was part of the community expectancy that, of course, we're part of a community. We will help with that. Right? So I imagine, if we're still thinking about that triangle, I imagine like a golden thread running through that triangle, and that golden thread is the sense of community and the sense of connection with other people who are either who live with us or live close to us, nevertheless are part of our community. Okay, so back to this circle. So this is another way to look at it. You'll notice that, let's start at the bottom. Physiological needs. Yeah, saw that. That need kind of stepped into the need for safety, into the need of love and belonging and esteem, right? Notice that this way to look at it includes aesthetics, music, and art as a basic human need. I'm an expressive arts therapist and dance movement therapist, so I would say 100% to that, right? Are you with me? So yeah, another basic human need. Now, once all these needs are met, the person, the self, the individual can actualize their full potential. Great. And once I can do that, you can do that, you can do that, and you can do that, together we're able to reach and be, as a community, the full expression of ourselves as a community together. Right? Then, if our community is doing the best we can. We've got our needs met, and together we're working towards something bigger than ourselves. We're of service to the living world and to a greater community. And beyond that, we're in service and in support to help our ecosystem and nature around us thrive and grow, which allows our physiological needs to be met and safety. And see, isn't that cool how it is circular, right? This has kind of made me really excited as another way to look at that. So with these in mind, I'd like for us to think about, what about if a child's needs aren't met, right? What about if my needs aren't met? Can that cause things to go a little sideways? Yes. So there are times when I might need more rest. Am I at my best at that point? Nope, I'm not. What if I don't have a sense of belonging or that people love or respect me in my community, in my classroom? Is that going to cause some problems? Yeah, right? So I call this the sneaky one, hidden unmet needs, because often when we're not aware of the needs that we have from this circle or from this triangle, when we're not aware of them, it may be harder to understand, oh, what's happening with my own behavior? Why do I feel so dysregulated? Why are my children? Why is everything falling apart? Well, we can go back to that list and decide, are these needs being met? Or are there some skills that are lagging, keeping that child or myself from getting those needs met, right? Big question to ask ourselves again and again when we begin to feel dysregulated, or we're feeling overwhelmed, or feeling stuck, or feeling like there's chaos everywhere. Remember back in about 30 so minutes ago? When things are like that, tap into that triangle, that circle, and ask the question, are my needs met in these different areas? Do I have lagging skills, right? That's a deep reflection to do. So know that our hidden unmet needs, when we're not self-reflecting and noticing, yeah, I want to deepen my sense of belonging in this community. Are my skills able to be put into action here? Yes, no. Well, what are your answers to that? How can you get those needs met? If you've got some lagging skills in that area, where can you shore up those skills for yourself in a similar way to the way that you help children shore up their skills to get their needs met? In a similar way that we shore up the skills of our community to help each other, right? So that's the triangle and the circle, thinking about the triangle and the circle together. Right? Okay. Now, Ross Greene. Told you we talked about Ross Greene. I have a huge professional crush on Ross Greene, as I think you probably all do. So Ross Greene says a lot of things, but one in particular that I want to focus on is the idea that children do well if they can, right? If they are not doing well, part of our honor and responsibility is to investigate and figure out what's missing and what can I assist with, right? What can I teach? What can I role model? How can I prepare the environment to support that child growing in their skills to get their needs met, right? What can I do to support our community to grow as a collective to get our needs met, right? Often when we take a look at children, the idea of children do well if they can, and we sit with that, it gives us opportunity to extend more grace to children, right? When we have a perspective that they're doing the best they can with what they got right now. Now, that would be ideal if we could come to every situation with that kind of mentality. That'd be great. Working toward that, right? And some days we still get frustrated or become dysregulated because we step away from the idea that they're doing the best they can with what they got. And yet we're human. So we have frustrations and we have feelings of being annoyed or even angry, right? Because we're human, right? When we pause and can take a look at or step back to, okay, they're doing well, they're doing as well as they can. Where can I investigate and teach into the skill that may be lagging? So here's an opportunity, another opportunity to pause and to write. Okay, so take a few moments and I invite you to consider the hierarchy of needs, the circular nature of needs and how it connects to the community. Take some time and write about what do you think about that, right? Bonus extra credit if you want to write about how are these needs showing up in my classroom. Is there a particular child that comes to mind during this webinar, during this series? You might have one child or two children in mind that brought you to this class in the first place. What might their needs be that aren't being met? What skills might you teach so that they can get their needs met? Is it a skill that you teach to the individual? Is it a skill that you teach to the community? Is it a skill that you practice yourself, right? Lots of different ways to take a look at this. So take a pause, grab something to drink, have a snack, write your writing, and then come back when you're ready. Okay, we're back. Deep breath. Take a stretch if you want. All right, here's my friend Toni Morrison, who writes so much wisdom. This one in particular has to do with what we're talking about today, because Toni Morrison says this: when a child walks into a room, your child or anybody else's child, do your eyes light up? Because that's what they're looking for. Do your eyes light up when they enter the room? Now, if we pause here for a moment and imagine, think of a person. Do you have a person in your life who lights up when you enter the room, right? Who are those people? And on a side note, tell them that you notice that and that you appreciate it, right? So they keep on doing it. What about the children in your classroom? Do you light up when they enter the room? How often do you do that? Do the other adults in the room light up, right? Now, there's a difference between lighting up with jazz hands, which there's a place, time and a place for that. But for the most part, what we're talking about this is a brightening. I'm happy to see you kind of lighting up. And this, we talk about the connection at neutral times. Now, this is that golden tool that if you don't get anything else from this webinar series, take this, because I'm telling you guys, it is powerful. And again, Joanne Nordling, tip of the hat to her and her book, Caring Discipline, for sure. I learned this directly from her and her work. And the idea behind connection at neutral times is paying attention during times that are neutral, right? Not necessarily during the time when they're doing something really great and we think is wonderful and yes, please, more of that behavior. And not during the times when they need our direction and our guidance, right? When their behavior is going sideways. So those behaviors exist, yes. But get this, there's a whole body of behaviors and circumstances that we would call neutral times, right? They're not doing anything that pleases us or displeases us. They're just existing. They're just coming into the space. They're just walking across the room. They're just putting their snack dish away. They're just hanging their coat up. They've just finished a book and they're putting it away and they're deciding what they're going to do next. All of those moments are neutral times, right? And get this, once you start to spot neutral times, you're going to see them everywhere, right? It's like, that's a neutral time, that's a neutral time. There's such power when we as adults can make a connection with the child during those neutral times, right? Those connections send the message to the child that they don't have to do anything but just exist to get our love and our connection, to be noticed. They just have to show up. They just have to walk across the space and make eye contact with us, or come stand by us, or put their snack dish away and they're turning, what's next, right? So when we pay attention to children and notice them during these times, they learn that they don't have to be sparkly and beautiful and strong and fast and all that to get our attention. And they don't have to throw and kick and spit and to get our attention, but they just have to exist. So that sends a message to them that they are loved unconditionally. Powerful stuff. Now, we were talking about children here, but I'd like for us all to remember we are all humans too, and we all need this also. So let's take a pause and write for a moment. And what I invite you to do is think about, okay, how do you connect with children during those neutral times? Now, the sweet part about connecting at neutral times is that it's brief and it's often nonverbal, right? Sometimes you might say a word, or you might have something that you say, and that's cool too. But think about keeping it true, brief, and nonverbal. What might that look like? So some universal connections might look like this: a wink. Get this, I learned that not everybody likes winks, right? A child that I had been connecting with at neutral times for years, when he was in 2.5 to about 5.5, 6 years old. And yeah, we would wink at each other every day, right? Well, shoot, he graduated into first grade into the elementary program, and I saw him in the hallway and I winked, and it stopped him dead in his tracks. And he looked at me and he said, "Don't wink at me, Miss Amy." I have to tell you, it kind of hurt my feelings because I thought, oh, he's growing up. And he was, right? So I had to shift my game. Did he still need connection at neutral times? Because was he still human? Yes. But my approach to that connection looked a little different. So it went from this to this. Super simple, subtle change. But the next time I saw him and I did a little chin up, he did a chin back, and all was right in the world. So it might be interesting to play around with different ways of connecting with children at neutral times. Some children might like that wink. Some might like the eyebrow. Some might like the wave, or some people might like a smile. Smile is kind of a universal one. So most people respond to that, right? It's kind of a social grace that you might teach. When someone smiles, you can smile back, or you can, when someone waves, you can wave back, right? So think about, what is your way to connect with others at neutral times, right? How often do you do that? And if there's a particular child who's having a particular struggle, write that child's name down and give yourself a goal to, next time you're in class with them, okay, this particular child, I'm going to connect at neutral times with him or her or them 10 times before lunch. It's a big goal. I'll tell you a story of a colleague I worked with a while back, and our goal was to increase the number of times all of the adults connected with this particular child who was having some big struggles. And that was our first tool to connect with this child, was to increase connection at neutral times. So she made a necklace with pony beads on it. She said, just to help myself keep track, because there was so much happening, of course. So whenever she would connect with this child at a neutral times, and hers was a wink, right? So she would wink, connect with him, and move one pony bead from one side of her necklace to the other. So the goal was to get, I can't remember if it's color coded or whatever, but it helped her count and get some data, right? Did I make it? My goal was to connect 10 times before lunch, or before snack is over, or before dismissal. it's a really helpful way when you can take down data and notice, get a baseline. How often do I do it naturally? Okay, maybe 3 times in a day or not that much. Right? How can I do it more often? When can I do it more often? When are those neutral times? Right? So gathering some of that preliminary data is really helpful so that you can notice the change and the shift in behavior when you increase that connection at neutral times, increase the frequency of connecting at neutral times, right? Another story I want to share with you about this and the power of this was a child who had some really big emotions and was struggling with managing those. So this child would get angry really quickly and flip tables and cleared entire shelves and would throw things, and it was problematic. So together as a team, we were trying to figure out, oh, what do we do? And connecting at neutral times was our first tool. And so at that point, I was student services support. I wasn't directly in the classroom, leading the classroom, but I had the opportunity to, every morning when I got there and classrooms settled, I would walk around the hallways of the classroom and would peek in, without interrupting or breaking concentration of children working and focusing and, doing their work in the classrooms. But I would find a moment. So this child and I made eye contact during a neutral time. I was standing at the door and I would wink at him. He was one that was okay with winks. It was good. Again and again and again, in the morning and in the afternoon. The teaching team was doing that throughout the day, all day, right? And that was my little moment at the beginning of the day and toward the end of the day for this child. One day, I came to the door, we made eye contact, and he winked at me first. And I felt my heart was going to swell and burst out of my chest because it felt so good. And there was a moment of, okay, I think we've turned a corner here. And sure enough, during that time, the shelf clearing and the table flipping behavior dramatically decreased because of, I want to say, we took the data. When we increased the connection at neutral times, we saw a decrease in the behavior that was really problematic. It was almost direct correlation. So try it out. And there we go. I've given you a lot to think about and a lot to write about. So you can pause right now and come back when you've finished writing. Who is a child that you'd like to connect with at neutral times? What are those neutral times? Would you like to set a goal for how many times you want to try it? Or do you want to just take some baseline data first? How often do you do it naturally? And then what is your thing? What is your way to connect? Is it a wave? Is it a wink? Is it a smile? Is it a shoulder shimmy? You're going to find your own way to do it, right? The child will let you know if the way that you choose is weird to them, right? Like the child who said, "Don't wink at me." It was very clear. I was like, Roger that. Got it. Okay, so find your pause button, pause, and when you're finished and you're ready, you come on back. Okay, now we're back. So there are a lot of things to think about, huh? We've talked about our leadership styles. How do we show up? Adult-centered, child-centered. Where do you show up along that arc? We talked about needs. What are basic human needs and how they might show up in your classroom? Are there some lagging skills that you can teach into? We've also talked about that connecting at neutral times. What does that look like? And you've had some time to think about, what child do I want to try that tool on today or tomorrow? Okay, so take a deep breath, give yourself some time in between viewing this this section of the webinar until the next one. put some things in practice, try things out, consider some things, shift some things, right? And if you have any questions, or if there are particular situations that you need more help with in those areas right now, here's a way to connect with me, amywilliamsacademy@gmail.com. I will do my very best to respond to you as fast as I can. And if you need to or want to set up time for individual one-on-one coaching, we can talk about that as well. I'm available for you to serve you in that way as well. Okay, so now here's the final part. Think about what is one thing that you plan to do in the coming weeks or coming days, right? What is that one thing that you learned today, that we talked about today, that you want to put into place, or that you want to talk to your colleagues about, right? I recommend trying something that you've learned that was new, trying it, putting into place, telling somebody about it, writing about it. That's a powerful way to integrate it into your brain, right? So adult brains work like that. When we put something into play that we learned, or a new perspective that we're thinking about or are considering, we have a greater percentage of successful recall in the long term. Otherwise, that information just poof, gets pruned away, so to speak. I'm very much simplifying that. I love brains, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but those of you out there know what I'm talking about. If you don't put it into action, you lose it. So you don't want to come 3 months later and go, wait, what was that? What did Amy talk about? What was that, adult-centered? I can't remember, right? So put something into action as soon as possible, all right? Write it down. That's a really helpful way. What's your plan? I plan to, and then say what you plan to do. Put a date on it when you want to look back and say, yep, I did the thing. It's often helpful to tell somebody else that you're going to practice this, or you're going to notice your style between adult center and child center. You're going to notice how often I connect with children at neutral times. I'm going to notice the needs as they show up in my classroom. And together, you can help each other, right? And your person may be able to say, hey, have you done that thing? That's always helpful. All right. So here are some books that are available from me to you. I've got several more that I'm cooking on right now, working on a bigger chapter book for teachers. So that should be coming out in the near future. So, but here are ones that I have. There's social stories. I call them Socimo books because they're books about things that are social and emotional. They're basically how to do things, how to ask a friend to play, how to ask about consent and what is it anyway, right? How to manage those big emotions when they come up. How do I stand up and show up as an upstander versus a bystander when I see behavior that's rude or mean or maybe even bullying? So those are my children's books. And then there's a journal called The Spark, A Creative Adventure for Teachers, that has a lot of the tools that we're going to be talking about throughout this entire series in journal format. So there are places for you to answer questions or to respond or consider tools to use as you're preparing for that hard conversation with your colleague or a family that you're serving, or how am I going to work with this particular child, right? So those are available. You can go to amywilliams.com, click on the books link, and that'll take you right to where you can get them. Or you can reach out to me too. Thank you so much for joining. Now is the time to take a deep breath, to take a pause, and I'll see you here for part 2.